Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Obsessive Compulsive Gaming. I am the Obsessive Compulsive Gamer, and this is my review for Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. So dear viewers, MGS Portable Ops originally released in 2006. A year I remember fondly as the year I played a hell of a lot of video games. But we are not here to discuss that. We are here to discuss Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. And just like that beautiful bearded bastard Barry Bertrum, you're probably wondering,
what is this? What is it? What is this?
MGS Portable Ops was released for the PSP originally, and this is a kind of, sort of direct sequel to Metal Gear Solid 3. Yes, I know there's a lot of people out there who say, well, Portable Ops isn't canon, is it? To which I say, well, Hideo Kojima produced the bloody thing. He also wrote the story for the bloody thing. It also leads very nicely into the events of Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, the game that would be canonically the next one in the timeline. So yes, of course it's bloody canon, you idiot. So let's review this totally canon Metal Gear Solid video game the only way I know how, badly. And let's start with what I like about this video game. Well, the game's story is the usual high standard that it always is in the Metal Gear series. We play as Big Boss. We meet a young Roy Campbell. We get to see some other characters that I won't spoil who may or may not turn up in the Metal Gear Solid series a little bit later. Or should I say, a few games later? In the timeline, anyway. There's a nice colourful cast of villains for Big Boss to go up against. There's some nice emotional moments, you know, the pretty standard Metal Gear Solid formula is present and correct here. We also get some, admittedly brief, voice acting from the legend of the genre, David Hayter. And while I wish more of the game was actually voice acted, it is nice to see the cutscenes with full voice acting. That's always a big plus in my book. Speaking of the cutscenes, those are also very marvelous. They have this kind of graphic novel comic book style to them, which I imagine is a lot cheaper to produce than, you know, FMV cutscenes, but all the same, they look splendid. And in fact, I believe they actually engaged an actual comic book artist to make these marvelous cutscenes, and they look wonderful. But sadly, dear viewers, that's pretty much all that's wonderful about this game. So let's discuss what I don't like so much about Portable Ops. Well, this having been a PSP game, you may recall that the PSP itself has only one analog stick, which meant that you pretty much had to control the camera with the D-pad. And let me just say, having attempted to play this game on a PSP as well as a PS Vita, and finally using a DualShock controller with the PlayStation TV, controlling this game is complete and utter arse. That is, unless you somehow can rebind the right analog stick to control the camera. But sadly, I didn't discover that until I had already played, half, 3/4 of the game, and I don't remember actually doing that in the past. But this being a handheld game, it doesn't control very good. Let's just say that. It's a little bit of a pain in the arse. And it results in you getting spotted quite a lot. It results in you not being able to see enemies. It results in you getting turned around and not knowing where the hell you're going. which is rather surprising considering that this game's stages are pretty bite-sized as it is, this being a handheld video game. And sadly, this having been a PSP game, there is obviously a lot of restrictions on what exactly they could do with the game, with the cutscenes, with the gameplay, with the in-gaming engine. So it all looks just a little bit cheap by today's standards. Apart from those comic book cutscenes with the voice acting that I mentioned before, which is still splendid. But the rest of the game, sadly, isn't voice acted. The music's nice, but it's definitely not up to the standards of Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, or even Metal Gear Solid itself. This game adds a mechanic where you have to recruit enemy soldiers, and sadly this game they haven't invented the Fulton system yet, you know, where you knock the enemy out and then you basically strap them to a balloon and they get taken back to Mother Base or whatever. No, in this game you have to knock them out and then drag them all the way back to the start of the stage where there's a van or a truck, whatever the hell you want to call it, and that's how you transfer them back, and it's a complete and utter pain in the arse. And yes, you do have to do it at certain points, because you have to basically have a team that can spy for you and gather intel so you know where to go. For example, there's a whole section of the game where you have to discover where they're keeping the new Metal Gear, and that involves in between missions sending out your spy team to different locations you've been to in the game, and they basically will report back with, oh, we found this, and this is where Metal Gear's being held. I don't like it very much. I don't like the recruiting process. I don't like having to kill time in between missions while intel is gathered, etc. It's a complete and utter pain in the arse. And that's probably the best way I can sum up my experience with this game. It's a pain in the arse. The gameplay isn't very good. Obviously, controlling Snake and the other bloody recruits that you have isn't very good because of that camera joystick issue. There's a distinct lack of voice acting. But we can always hope and pray that eventually we will get a remaster of this game. Perhaps in Volume 2 of the Master Collection, which I assume will come out at some point. I'll keep my fingers crossed for that. But this one, nice story, good cutscenes, nice voice acting, but that's about it. Therefore, I declare that Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops is okay, I guess. Maybe. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my review for Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. If you enjoyed this little review of mine, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed it, well then feel free to give me a thumbs down. But please remember the single most important thing I always tell you, dear viewer, and that is to always stay obsessed with gaming. Are you still here? Oh, you must have really enjoyed this video then. In that case, you had better subscribe to the channel and check out our other content. Otherwise, you're a booby pants, and no one wants to be a booby pants.